give away the idea that India is supporting you straight out there?
Not for me to say. It will be really for Indian authorities to actually decide on the merits of the candidates whom they want to support. And that has nothing to do with the friendship between France and India, which certainly is alive and kicking in the many companies that invest in India, in the many companies that trade between India and France. But irrespective of that, which is, you know, a given and needs to be nurtured all the time,
Sure.
my candidacy, you know, will stand on what I've done as Minister of Finance, what I've done as President of the G20 over the last 8 months, what I've done as President of the European Union Ministers of Finance meetings right at the time when the financial crisis hit. And it will be for, you know, voters and clearly for Indian authorities to appreciate, consider and decide what and whom they want to have as managing director.
Interesting thing that he said during the press conference is that if I do become the IMF chief, then a part of me will turn Indian. So you certainly are sort of warming up to the idea and believes that there should be a far more Indian-Chinese representation than IMF has ever had.
What I'm certain of is that if I was to be elected, I would no longer be a French national representing French interests. I would no longer be a European member of the European Union and arguing for Europe. I would become a member representing 187 members of the IMF. One of those very important members is India, which is why I said that a little part of me becomes Indian as a result.
Do you truly believe that the future of Europe today, given the state it is in, hinges on who takes over the IMF?
Europe has a future no matter what, irrespective of who becomes the managing director of the IMF. Europe is the product of war, of disasters, and actually the Bretton Woods institutions were built on the back of those horrible world war that took place in the mid-20th century. And Europe is a fantastic creature, built over time, originating because people decided that it was time for peace, that it was time for economic development, that it was time for monetary union. It's a constantly evolving process because it needs to be perfected. And clearly going through the crisis has been an ordeal for the Europeans at large, and
you
we
talk
need
about
to continue to work at it.
And I want to pick up that word evolve, because you talk about evolution and there's constant criticism that IMF has not evolved with the times. Now, while you in principle may agree, I'm trying to wonder if you do become the IMF chief, would you be ready for such a big change? Do you want to take on the change of bringing Asia more representation? Is that something that people should be assured or reassured with? Because the fact that you're going from one country to the other in BRICS, I suppose you do want to bring them on board.
I certainly do. I think it's critically important that countries like India be on board and be fully associated with the process of making sure that the institution, the International Monetary Fund, evolves over time and adjusts as the economy changes. You know, decades ago we had a nice bilateral organization. We had a very strong economic power with the United States. Europe and Japan rebuilding over time. And then as the world is changing, as the emerging economies are now taking the lead and are driving growth around the world, the funds, like many other institutions, has to adjust, and reform has already begun, but it needs to continue.
Do you think, though, that the demand from emerging markets, which I think even our Prime Minister on global stage has been fairly candid about, the need to change IMF's composition, is that demand illegitimate today to want an IMF head who belongs to the BRICS?
You know, one thing that we all agree upon today with your Prime Minister, with the Minister of Finance, with the Vice Chairman of the Development Committee, is that the candidate should be selected on the basis of his or her merits, irrespective of nationality, irrespective of region of origin. And to use my own words, English is not my natural language, but the country of origin should not either prejudice or privilege a candidate. And we agreed on that today. It should be merit-based, it should be open, should be transparent, and it's as part of that process that I came to India to express my views and indicate my willingness to be a candidate.
I was going to ask you exactly that, and many of our viewers are watching you live right now would be wondering that why is Christine Lagarde on such a big lobbying trip? Because not anyone else in the IMF race is out there making this effort. So is there sort of an understanding, even though not explicit, between the US and Europe about backing you? Is there a vibration that people want you there?
Well, if there was such a joint consensus between Europe and the United States, why would I bother? Why would I come to India? Why would I visit China? Why would I go to Cairo? Why would I visit the African Development Bank and its members? I think it's critical that there is a very large consensus, and that whoever is the managing director has support not only from a usual base, but from the largest possible base, so that the institution with a strong managing director who is endorsed by the largest possible constituencies can actually do the job that it has to do. And I think it's critical that the job be well done now.
True. And in the lists of countries that want something from the IMF, I don't know if India is any more so, on top, but the fact is that various BRICS economies do want something. What do you think could be the first thing you would end up doing should you become the IMF chief? What could be done in favor of emerging markets, which feel neglected when it comes to that relationship?
If I was elected managing director of the institution, I would like to do two things. I would like to make sure that the staff at the IMF feels confident that it has a managing director that is going to engage them in a process of using their skills, optimizing their fantastic intellectual potential, making sure that their resources are put at the best possible use. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is engage the board. There's an executive board which is representing all members, the 187 members, through an interesting governance that I will not bother you with. But I would want to make sure that the board is also engaged, that there is no ill feeling, that the countries that have thrown their hat in the ring do not feel excluded or left out. So I would want to engage, reach out, and then of course make sure that the emerging market economies that feel that they are underrepresented, that they don't have enough representatives in the staff of the IMF.
But you're willing to go with the shake-up?
I'm not sure that the institution needs a shake-up right now. Okay. I think it needs to be altogether engaged, focused on the jobs that it has to do, and it needs to continue to deliver the reform process that has been expected of it, that has been voted, that has not yet been implemented, and we need to constantly adjust and adjust.
How do you take to the comment that you're set to bring charm and not substance at the IMF? How do you take to these comments?
Probably a male comment.
Well, I'm guessing it is.
If it was, I wouldn't be surprised, and nor would you.
Yes, absolutely. But truly, the fact is, it's, men make up the real world that you'll have to fight a whole lot, and you have been in the past. Well, successfully, yes, but at the IMF, we've seen that it's been a male-dominated place, and I think becoming a woman head would be another feather in your cap. But truly, how do you deal with that? The substance issue.
I would certainly represent the other half of the world, because what you call the real world would be very, very exclusive and very crippled if it did not include women.
Do you believe that at this stage, IMF is not necessarily in the need of an economist at the front? And often people talk about, while you may not be a PhD in economics, you would have certainly done enough finance in the past in your career. Do you feel that today it needs a negotiator more than an economist?
It has plenty of fantastic and terrific economists, and I'm not sure that the fund actually needs necessarily another one to lead the others. I bring my set of skills, I bring my expertise. As I said, having weathered the storm for the last 6 years and not unsuccessfully, in any false modesty aside, and bringing my skills as the leader and the manager of an institution that encompassed about 38 nationalities,
right,
with very, very sizable egos, because partners in a law firm are big egos. I think that's a special set of skills that can be put at use.
Yes, considering that you come from one of the successful law firms yourself, I guess. But you said it's better to have jaw and not war.
Yeah, that wasn't me, that was Churchill.
And yes, you quote him a lot. And so, you know, while you do use that quote, how do you think you're going to manage that at the IMF?
The IMF was a post-war institution, and one that is intended to bring stability and not instability. One that is trying to resolve the imbalances and restore balances. And that would be my drive, that would be my objective.
Do you think that Europe today is beginning to back too much on the bailout story? I think many times the developing world, which was relatively unscathed during the recession, feels that every time there's a country in trouble, there's a bailout sought. Bailouts have become backups, and that's not a good idea.
Don't forget that Europe was built on the principle of a no bailout system. And that, as such, did not work.
Yes.
So we had to, re-architecture, re-engineer, redesign a portion of that euro system and euro base that was designed 10 years ago. Any bailout is not necessarily a good bailout, but the principle of bailing out, if it has proper consideration on both sides, is perfectly legitimate. It's a question of what's on, both sides of the balance.
Where do you see Europe going today?
It's going in a direction where it's going to strengthen, where there will be more in common rather than less, where the euro will continue to strengthen. It's clearly in a transition phase, and one that will make it stronger, as any crisis does. The reason why some of the emerging market economies have weathered the storm much better than developed part of the world had to do with the fact that they faced in their own time, at their own course, at their own pace,
but took tough
difficult crisis, and at the time had to build up. What does not destroy you strengthens you. This is not Churchill, it's Nietzsche.
Right, but when you yourself have been lobbying over the last few days, you've mentioned that you would ensure, even as IMF, potentially the IMF chief, that you would not let Europe break its confidence of coming together. And as we speak, Obama and Merkel are meeting, and they are also discussing the state of the IMF, and Merkel already backs you. Do you think that that is really the challenge today, avoiding a crisis of confidence and a potential breakup of Europe?
I think building confidence, reinforcing confidence is a constant necessity for any government, whether in Europe or elsewhere.
What are you going to shop in India this time, besides support?
Wonderful things in India. I look at your jewelries, I look at your beautiful outfit, silk, clearly from India, beautiful scarves, fantastic.
Are you always positive, or is that a fallout of working with men all your life?
Grit your teeth and smile is what I was told by my swimming coach many years ago. I keep that as a principle.
Has that sport helped you while you negotiate?
Of course it did. Hold your breath.
Hold your breath. On that note, thanks very much for joining us. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you so much.
She's learned her lessons well, hasn't she, from all her coaches that she's been taught by. Christine Lagarde in exclusive conversation with ET Now here. She's in India to lobby, and the one channel that she spoke to was us. Thanks very much for being with us on this show.
Somewhere between a busy airport and a maddening schedule, you realize a road is not about a destination, or miles, or minutes. And a day has only 86,400 moments. Dress code, Reed and Taylor.
Presenting the new Ad Gel Achiever with improved dye base ink. Now, non-dry up to 2 years. World's finest gel pen. Ad Gel Achiever.
Beautiful shot, fantastic. What a shot. Brilliant work. This is outstanding stuff from Virat Kohli.
Corporate India is opening new doors of opportunity. Business dynamics are constantly evolving.
Business First is your window to trends that evolve in India Inc. With the biggest business stories from the sharpest reporting team.
Inside access to corporate dealings on priority for your business with Business First.
Every weeknight at 8, only on ET Now.
Brought to you by Provence Estate, finest French Riviera living, now in Gurgaon.
Switch off the noise.
Switch on the news.
From headlines